watch him. Who had fun at Christmas? Yep. What'd you get? What was the best present? Hands up. Who was the most proud of their present? Yes. What was it?
A Dyson hairdryer.
They're the vacuums, and it dries your hair. So they made the air go the other way this time. The Dyson. Hopefully there'll be better jokes than that. I'm good at Dyson hairdryer. I like it. How good is that feeling? Christmas morning, there you are. You open up your present, and it's a Dyson hairdryer. What was your reaction? What did you do? Yeah. So my name's Seamus Evans, and I'm going to tell you how I turn my flaw into a superpower. My flaw into a superpower. My flaw into a superpower. Oh, you've been listening. Good. So my flaw is Tourette syndrome. Does anyone know what Tourette's is, by the way? Anyone want to explain it? I do this presentation all over the country in schools, and I asked her, I said, does anyone know what Tourette's is? This little kid put up his hand in grade 5, 2,000 students. I ran down and said, what's Tourette's, mate? He goes, it's when you're crazy and you've got mental problems, and my sister has it, and my parents keep fighting about it because dad's in denial. Whoa! Okay, thanks, buddy. Take a seat. Tourette syndrome is a neurological condition made up of tics, both motor and vocal tics. Now, you must have both motor and vocal to be classified as Tourette syndrome. Now, just to sum up how it feels, basically, is like an itch on your arm. You know how subconsciously you'll be there and go, someone go, itchy arm, mate. What? Didn't even realise. Everybody's brain self-regulates by firing off signals to the body. Unwanted signals, right? But everybody's brain has a gate to stop the unwanted signals from firing through. People with Tourette's have a weak or no gate. So those signals fire through. Like having two paddocks, one with sheep in it, no gate. Guess what happens to the other paddock? The sheep get through. So that's the same thing as Tourette's. Now there is something called suppression. We can suppress our tics, but that's the same as not blinking. So you can go for a very long period of time without blinking, but over a period of time it's going to start getting frustrating and you're going to have to do it anyway. Who wants to see my tics, by the way?
Yes.
You want to see them? Who wants to see my tics?
Yes.
Okay. She's keen. I need that. Yes! Show me your tics! Okay. You know what I'll do? I'll get everybody collectively to count. So I'm going to stand here and I'm going to show you each one individually. Can we do that?
Yes.
Right. Collectively we count. Sometimes I have to say that to teachers and they watch me. And I'm like, come on, you guys, okay? All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Yeah, man.
8,
Mum, man.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Okay, I lost you at the nipples, didn't I? Where did we get up to? 16. Okay, something like that. Tourette's, it can be hilarious. This one, the nipples. That actually came about because, is anyone a runner, like a marathon runner? You right? Yeah. So, I was training for a marathon and I was running like 20 kilometers at a time. Not in speed. And what happens over a period of time, your shirt rubs against your nipples and it was getting a rash. So I'm running going, But I realised, I thought, you know what, to stop that, I'll just take my shirt off and run without a shirt on. The problem is, that became a tic. And now the best way to describe what a tic feels like, right? You know when you put a cotton bud in your ear and you get that right spot and you're like, oh. That's what it feels like when you get your tick out. So I'm running down the street without a shirt, I'm going, oh. Oh. Everyone's like, ah! Someone call the police! There's a sexual predator down here! Well, this one, I've had that forever. And I'll be walking down the street. And when someone's walking towards me, they think I'm saying hello. And they're like, g'day mate. But I don't want to be a weirdo and be like, no, I don't know you. I've got Tourette's. I don't know you. That would be weird. So I just pretend I know them. G'day Barry. I'll see you at Christmas. Oh. Well, this one. That one I had when I was about 16 and it's only come back recently and it is so funny because when you hear this, you don't automatically think that's a noise that came out of his mouth. You think it came from another orifice. So during COVID and I'm wearing a mask at a cafe and I have to join it looking around, who was that? Anyway, double shot latte please. Or I walked past this guy the other day and I didn't even realise I did it. And he got quite close to me. And I'm a very jumpy guy and he goes, g'day mate, I went, ah! Like his reaction scared me. Or you know when you catch a movie or you catch an aeroplane and there's always like the armrest and you always like have a battle for the armrest? Like whose armrest is it? The best thing about Tourette's. So I win that battle every time. I sit there. And the guy next to me goes, what are you doing? And I go, so I get both armrests. I remember when I was a kid, I was young, I was a kid and I said to Mum, Mum, I want to be in the army. She goes, Seamus, I'm sorry, I don't think they're going to take someone who's neurodiverse in the military who has Tourette's. I was like, oh, I could probably join the army band and play the trumpet or the drums. I mean, let's face it, I'm not going to be a sniper, am I? Shh. Come in, Seamus. You're the best sniper in the Australian military. We need your steady hands to take out Vladimir Putin. Yeah, this is Seamus here, best sniper in the world. Target in sight. I'll fire when ready. I missed! Now, there is no cure for Tourette syndrome. If you have it, you have it. After living with it for 32 years, my cure is humour. Being able to make people laugh about it. Maybe I laugh a little too much. She wet herself. Or she's just developed Tourette's in the stomach. She's got a new one. It's just like the cotton bud feeling. Oh. Well, that's good. Because my cure has been able to make people laugh about it and being able to make jokes about it. But for a very long time, when I was a kid, I hated it. I hated it. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. These were the cards that I was given. And in life, you don't get to choose the cards you were dealt. I didn't ask for it. It was just how I was born. I distinctly remember the day we decided to go and get a diagnosis. Because up until a certain age, I called them habits. We didn't know what it was. Growing up in the 90s, we never heard of Tourette syndrome before. And I remember I had long hair, and I would flip my hair out of my eyes. And so we'd go get a haircut. And then after the haircut, I'm flicking. Mum goes, what do you keep doing it for? I don't know, it's my habits. And one day, it was before going to bed, and me and my mum were in my bedroom and I was praying. And And she heard me and I said, God, take these habits away from me. And that broke her heart. So we went through to the GPs and we got to the specialists and we ended up getting a diagnosis. 1 in 100 kids have Tourette's. 1 in 200 adults have Tourette's. Statistically, it's more common in males than it is in females. And it falls underneath the neurodiverse umbrella. And underneath that, many people with Tourette's also are autistic, have ADHD, OCD, more likely to experience depression, anxiety, and stress. Also, so many people with Tourette's have sleeping disorders. And when I was a kid, I hated it. I didn't want these things. I hated it because it made me different. It made me different to everyone else. And when you're in the schoolyard, you're a sitting duck with something so visual. And I would constantly hear these comments. Stop doing it, Seamus. Hey, Seamus, you're a freak. Take your medication, weirdo. Oh, Seamus is there. Get away from him. And I had an OCD-related tic. So if I stubbed one toe, I would have to stub the other toe. If I bumped my leg, I'd have to bump the other leg at the exact same pressure and exact same angle. Now, when the kids at school found this out, they cornered me in a room and would slap me in the face as hard as they could. And then they'd stand back and they'd watch. And I had to slap the other side. And they would laugh. And there was 4 of them. And they were massive. And I was tiny. I couldn't do anything about it. I hated it. And in turn, I started to hate myself. It was like, have you seen those jokes people play where there's a fake snake tied to a string and they put it on their belt, and when they see it, they run, and then the snake chases them? That's how it felt when I was a kid and I didn't know what they were. I'd have tic fits, and I'd run away to try and get away from it, and it would keep following me. I remember I would tic so hard I'd give myself a headache. I would ruin my voice box. I would bang my knees together so hard, leaving massive bruises. And I would get home after school and I would ball my little fist up and I would punch myself in the face as hard as I could. And that wasn't a tic. It's because I hated them and I wanted them gone. I wanted to fit in like everybody else. I just wanted to be normal. That was my adversity. That was my challenge that I faced. Adversity is a difficult situation, and we all face adversity. It could be a diagnosis, it could be a challenging situation, it could be a self-appointed setback, an insecurity, but we all face adversity. Now, mixed with ADHD, I couldn't sit still. I was like a pinball machine. I could never concentrate. Everything the teacher said went in one ear and out the other. So I failed all of my subjects. And I remember, as a defense mechanism, to try and pretend I was normal just for my own sake, it was like I wore a giant elephant on my back. And whenever people would look at me and double take, I'd just look away. It was like I was walking around with this elephant. And whenever someone would ask, what do you keep doing that for? I would just come up with a defensive quip and say, I just drank a whole bunch of Red Bull, and run away. Because I just desperately wanted to fit in and be normal. I didn't want to stand out from the crowd. And as it turned, I hated these things. Now, when I was a kid, all I wanted to be was on television. Like Graham Norton, Graham Kennedy Grove Live, Carl Stefanovic, who loves Carl. Carl, you're more of a Koshy lady? No? You love Carl! Yeah. That's all I wanted to be. Could you imagine what television station in their right mind would let a kid who could barely read or write, couldn't sit still, ticked more than a Swiss watch, be on TV? And now, we're going to cross live over to Seamus Evans with the weather report. Yeah, down here on the Gold Coast, the weather... Oh, look, there's a dog! It wasn't going to work! However, fresh out of school, I was 18 years of age, and I was lucky enough. I got to audition for a TV show called Toasted TV, which is a cartoon show on Channel 10 in the morning. This was it. This is all I ever wanted. This was my chance. And finally, I got the job. It was like waking up Christmas morning, and there was the Dyson hairdresser. Hair dryer. I was like, yes! Now remember, I wasn't forthcoming in telling the boss that just employed me that I had Tourette syndrome. So, within the first week, he noticed me and he pulled me aside and said, hey, why do you keep twitching like that? And I said, oh, well, I've got Tourette's. Now, as kids, why are we afraid of the dark? It's because we don't know what's in it. And that was his exact reaction. So, he said to me, he dangled a little carrot. He said, well, listen, if your Tourette's is going to stand in the way, if your Tourette's is going to be a problem, we'll just fire you and we'll get someone else. You're still under probation. It was like waking up Christmas morning with that Dyson hairdryer and then someone taking it away before I even got a chance to dry my wet hair. You know you're going to get referenced the whole time. I was gutted. That heart-sinking feeling, these stupid things that I didn't want in the first place, now stand in the way of the only thing that I wanted to achieve. So I was faced with two options. Option one, just quit. Just quit. It's too hard. I've got Tourette's. What am I, crazy? I'm not going to be on TV. Or two, hey, why don't I just go for it? What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to fire me anyway. Let's see how long I can last. So I decided on the second one. And I made a very clean, clear decision from that moment. I will never let my adversity, I would never let these diagnoses stand in the way of me having a go at achieving my wildest dreams. But in order to do that, I had to do a very important thing. I had to accept it. I had to stop running away from it. I had to stop pretending to be someone else. Stop ignoring it. It's like when your car breaks down, you've got to open up the bonnet to see what's inside. And I had to do that. The first thing I had to do was acceptance. Radical acceptance. So every morning when I woke up, I would concentrate on my body and how am I feeling? Am I tired? Am I angry? Am I stressed? Am I happy? Am I excited? And I would register a tick. Okay, a tick. And I'd register that itch. And I'd work out, hang on a second, how can I scratch that itch in another way? Instead of scratching it like this, how can I scratch it? Like that. And as these ticks would come in, I would try and redirect them. Now, they were going to fire me after that first week. I ended up working on Toasted TV for 4 years. Now, if I had given up, I never would have had those 4 years. And let me tell you, working on Toasted TV was so much fun. I loved it. We used to host it from Movie World, Wet n Wild, Dream World, Sea World. We had this segment called Chuck It In. So people would write in ingredients we had to put in a blender. Do you know what I'm talking about? and the ingredients were so creative. We wanted you to put blue cheese, chili, lamb's brains, Tabasco sauce, and chocolate. Oh, it was so much fun. Oh, I just had a whale of a time. I went all over Australia in a caravan and I got to meet very interesting people. I went all over. Who loves Lord of the Rings? Any Lord of the Rings fans? I went over to New Zealand where they made Lord of the Rings and I got to hold the green suit that the actor Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum, wears. And I was like, oh, my precious. Who loves Star Wars? I went over to ILM, Industrial Light and Magic in San Francisco, where they make Star Wars. This is George Lucas's production company. And no one ever knows when he's going to be there. They only know when he was there because people have seen him and they talk about him. And we were over there with a Scandinavian journalist at the time. And my ADHD is kicking off, so I'm in the foyer waiting for an interview. And I see about 40 people in business suits, looking very serious with briefcases. And a guy who just looks like George Costanza, like just completely out of place. And I'm like, who's that guy? That's George Lucas. And then the Scandinavian journalist goes, oh look, it's Steven Spielberg. Oh. Wrong guy. But because I accepted that I was different, I accepted the fact that I had something to work on, I worked on it. And over that 4 years, it was more than just my Tourette's that I accepted. I started accepting other things, like my personality, my likes and my dislikes, and finding confidence in them. For example, I don't like sport. I hate it. I don't like watching it. I don't like playing it. Now, I went to an all-boys school, and that's all they did. So do you know how many times I was like, oh, did you watch that game last night? Oh, yeah, mate, that rep, that kick, that was ridiculous. Shame it was basketball. Oh. trying to pretend to be someone else because I was embarrassed by it. But over that acceptance journey, I started accepting everything about myself. And in that, I was growing in confidence. And I'd started to become a really good television presenter, to the point where the boss of Totally Wild, which is a kids' wildlife adventure show on Channel 10, pulled me aside and said, "Seamus, how do you want to move down to Adelaide? We'll give you a pay rise and you can be a reporter for Totally Wild." It was like waking up Christmas morning. And it was like getting a super duper Dyson hairdryer and cutter. Again, I was over the moon. This was it. This is my job. This is my career. This is what I always wanted. But again, I was faced with those two problems. I failed school. Honestly, I spelled skateboard with a number 8 in it. Now, the difference between the shows is Toasted TV was a lot more colour and movement, right? A bit of fun. Whereas this was like a journalist's job, but for kids' TV. So there was a lot of reading, a lot of researching, a lot of writing, putting together visions to tell a really impactful story and educate. And I failed school. So I was faced with those two problems again. Seamus, just quit. You're 23, you can barely even read or write. It's so embarrassing, man. Quit and do something else. Don't take that leap of faith. Don't take that chance. Or two, hey, I've already come this far. Let's see how much further I can go. So again, I accepted the fact that I had poor literacy skills and I worked on it. Every single night, I would read. I would read everything I got my hands on until my eyes would fall out. I would start out with kids' books, then go into teenage novels, then going into adult books. No, not 50 Shades of Grey. I would read everything, and then I started exercising the ability to write and working on that skill set. And I would keep a diary. I would write a journal. I would write movie reviews that would never get published or articles, just for my sake of getting better at that skill set. Now, I ended up working as a Totally Wild reporter for 3 years. That's 7 years in total, this career, where they were going to fire me after that first week because of my flaw, because of my adversity, because of my setback, because of my insecurity. But through that acceptance journey, understanding what to work on and getting to work on it, I lasted 7 years. Now, Totally Wild was so much fun. I had a ball on Totally Wild. I met Jane Goodall. Who knows who that is?
Yeah.
Jane Goodall, this lady is amazing. She's so impressive. When she was like 20 in the 70s, she went to live with the chimpanzees in the jungle and watch them. And until this point, science determined human beings separate from animals because humans use tools and animals don't. Now, as a 21-year-old girl in the 70s, she's watching them and works out that chimpanzees use tools. This is amazing. So she takes these findings back to the scientists and says, hey, you've got to class chimpanzees as humans, or change the definition of a human being in the science journals. It's amazing. So when I got a chance to interview her, I said, Jane, when you discovered this, did you go, ha ha, I discovered something before you? She looked at me in disgust and said, no. Tough crowd. It was very awkward. Everybody else laughed but her. I held baby capuchin monkeys jumping all over me. I learned how to catch brown snakes, inland taipans, red belly blacks by hand. I also went diving with great white sharks. Well, I say I did. See, 2 weeks before we were meant to go, the tour guy called me up and said, mate, a pod of killer whales just came through and killed 2 great white sharks. Do you still want to come? Absolutely. Channel 10's paying for this trip. Yes, I'm coming. But when we get down there, we travel 3 hours in South Australia on the rough seas. We get down there, it's icy cold, put the masks on. Nothing. Thankfully, Totally Wild had been on for 29 years and had done millions of shark stories. So I was very much, welcome to Totally Wild. You guys want to check out some sharks? How many sharks have we got? How many teeth do they have? All right, let's go. And then it just went to vision from 10 years ago. So Australia thinks I went diving with great white sharks. Also, I did a story on otters. You guys know what an otter is? Subaquatic mammal, about yay big, living in large bodies of water. You know how every animal has a collective name, right? Do you know what the one for otters is? A friend of mine said to me, he goes, Seamus, do you know what the collective noun for otters is? I said, what? He goes, a business. They called it a business of otters. I was like, amazing. I'll do a Totally Wild story on that. So I decided to go to the zoo. I put a suit on, had a briefcase, a little tie. Welcome to Totally Wild. Today, it's time to get down to business. No, I'm not talking about a CBD with high-rise buildings and office politics. I mean a business of honours. During the interview, how many employees in this business? Hilarious. Well, it was great. Edited it up, sent it up here to Brisbane to the office, and the producer calls me up and says, "Seamus, great story, mate. Just doing some fact checking." It's not actually called a business. It's called a bevy. But he goes, "But, great story. Just change that to a voiceover and all good." I'm wearing a suit. Like, how am I? The next day, the producer went on holidays. So I just put it to air. So now there's a whole generation of kids. "Mum, do you know what the collective now for honours is?" Don't believe everything you watch on television. Who wants to see my time on TV? Yes. Okay, for the 6 people, if you guys want to stay here. Who wants to see my time on TV? Yes. Great. All right, Aiden. 1. Hit it. Welcome to Totally Wild, where you never know what's going to happen.
G'day, Seamus. Yes, record store day kicks off tomorrow, but we're celebrating early here at Dylan on the parade. You know, picking out some of our favourite tunes. Oh, what have we got here? Oh, we got the best of Elton John and Fire. Peter, I was scared into summertime. I was scared of pretty girls and starting conversations. All my friends are turning green. Your magicians are still down in their dream. Like you're one star.
Success!
Running down to the dark side. Of course, we are talking about pop group Hanson, who are back and better than ever in Australia.
What's very impressive is you guys have been on the music range for like 20 years. Now, here on the Toast, we love giving nicknames. We're thinking for you, maybe KJ. You cool with that?
KJ's good. It's a little predictable.
You know, well,
Very straight. Yes, yeah. The Muppets.
that's excellent. Well, we're both very excited to meet you guys. Now, obviously, we need to talk about something very important. What's your favourite food?
How would you like to pay for that, sir?
Oh, just pay my face. It's an easy choice to make if you want them to look cool and trendy, just like my new Zip visitor card from People's Choice.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for joining us on Totally Wild. It's great to have you, and it's good to have you in Australia. But can you explain to us what Chinchillas is all about?
Chilpa is going back into his own environment. All right. Come on, buddy. Ooh. He's excited to be back. I feel well.
No, well. Exactly, textbook.
While releasing techniques. But he's going to be okay now, isn't he?
We've got a campfire, the southern sky, the stars shining, great company, and every man and his dog giving us a good little Have we had fun, everyone? Yeah!
So, how many ticks did you see me do? 1? I've got a YouTube channel. And I put that video up there and it's got 2,000 views. And I've watched it 1,998 times. So I know exactly how many ticks I did. 1, you're correct. Because I went through this acceptance journey and I registered these ticks and I learned how to redirect them. I learned how to disguise them into my body language. So when I was on television, people couldn't notice. And because we don't want to suppress the ticks, I didn't want to stand there the whole time without ticking and be like a robot on TV. So I learned how to redirect them so I could achieve the job of my dreams. Now, what I'm going to do is, how many did we count? Do you remember? 16? I lost you at the nipples. So what we're going to do, I'm going to stand here. Now, instead, we count it out aloud. Instead of that, I want you all to watch me. And in your head, I want you to count. I'm going to stand here. What's your name, miss? Cheryl. Can you please count to 20 seconds in your head when I say? So we're going to stand here quietly, watching me, counting. Cheryl's counting. And then when I say, oh no, and then when you get to 20, say stop. Okay? All right. Go. Okay. Yell it out. How many did you see?
2.
2? 5? Okay, I'm going to run through them. First thing I did was tense my stomach, roll my stomach, tense my left butt cheek, my right butt cheek, my left thigh, my right thigh. I pressed my heels together very slightly. I flexed my left pec very quickly. I pointed over here and went to someone completely, and it was completely irrelevant. I flicked my wrist when I checked my watch. What I learned how to do is find these different ways to scratch that itch without it being so visual. It's like, or I would use all these different techniques by constantly moving around. In the middle of an interview, I'd be like, hey, Guy Sebastian, so how did you come up with this song? Okay. No way. I would find ways to place it. I'd stand out of shot and then jump back into shot. I found ways to work with it. I didn't want my adversity to be a setback. It was just something I had to learn how to manage. Now, something else happened. After this acceptance journey and really falling in love with myself and really exploring my likes and dislikes, I discovered a passion. And I worked out that, you know what? I love television, but my passion, my true passion, was radio. So I took a leap of faith. I quit my job in Adelaide, packed my little car, drove to Melbourne, because I had high hopes of being the next Kyle Sanderlands. Not a Kyle man? No. She'll have Carl, not Kyle. Now, this is so important that I tell you this. At this age, see, I got a job on television, national television, at the age of 18 for 7 years. Now, this was before the uprise of TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. There were only 3 television stations, and I was one of them. I was getting recognised in streets. People were asking for autographs, taking photos. I didn't have to line up to any nightclubs. You know what I'm talking about? He knows. He knows. So as a result, my head grew massive, and I had this huge ego, and I grew in arrogance, and I thought to myself, been on TV for 7 years, I'm going to get a job like that. Well, guess what happened when I went to Melbourne? Nobody cared. And for the first time in my professional career, I was rejected. Every phone call that I made was hung up on. Every email that I sent never got a response. Every metaphorical door that I knocked on slammed in my face. And as I mentioned before, people with Tourette's are more likely to experience depression. As a result, I slipped into a horrible depression because that giant inflatable ego deflated like a balloon. And if anyone here has experienced poor mental health, we know it sucks. We know it sucks. Not being able to get out of bed sucks. My brain has a horrible habit of playing tricks on itself. My brain always putting me down. Seamus, you suck. You're not good enough. You don't deserve this. You're not funny. Just give up. Just quit. No one likes you. And this would happen all day, but I had to grow in determination. And I had to learn resilience. And resilience is your ability to get back up after being knocked down. Resilience is your ability to get back to normal after a setback. Resilience is your ability to step forward after being knocked back. And I had to do that. I had to learn that resilience, to continue that determination. So I would do everything in my power to get out of bed, to combat this mental health problem. I saw a professional, I saw a psychologist. And if anyone ever experienced poor mental health, please see a psychologist. I also started experimenting with other things, like I would do a gratitude journal. Does anyone know what a gratitude journal is? I would write down at least 3 things that I was grateful for. And it could be anything. I'm grateful that it's sunny today. I'm grateful for the great movie I watched. It could be really surface or it could be really deep. I'm so grateful that I have my parents. I'm so grateful that I have my friends. I'm so grateful that I'm able-bodied. Whatever it is, finding that really deep thing to be grateful for. And then I started doing something else to combat these horrible negative self-talk. I would do a message to your inner child. Now, I don't care how tough you think you are. Everybody has an inner critic, an inner child. This little person inside of you that keeps you in your comfort zone. How many times growing up did you accidentally call the teacher mum instead of miss? And everybody laughed. Or you got up to accept an award and you tripped and everyone laughed. Every time you go to step outside of your comfort zone, your little inner child reminds you, don't do that, don't do that. Everyone, you might fall over again, you might say the wrong word, people are going to laugh at you. Don't do it. It's actually there to protect you so you don't get into harm's way. It's there to remind you. They pick these things and remind you of them. Nothing good happens inside your comfort zone. No growth happens inside your comfort zone. So I had to do everything to combat that. And I would write a message to my inner child. Seamus, you are loved. Seamus, you deserve this. Seamus, you are funny. I had to overcombat that negative self-talk. Has anyone heard the theory that if you talk to your plants, they grow faster? I'll tell you a story about my dad. This is a true story, he did this. He got 5 tomatoes and he cut them in half. And he put half of the tomatoes in a sandwich bag and sealed them and wrote, love. Then he put the other half of the tomatoes in another sandwich bag, sealed it and wrote, hate. And every day for 2 weeks he'd walk past each bag of tomatoes. The ones that said, hate. I hate you! You suck! No one wants to eat you, you're disgusting! You taste horrible! The ones that said love, say, oh, you juicy little tomato. Yes, you are. You are so nice and juicy. You're amazing. I can't wait to eat you. After 2 weeks, the ones that said hate were moldy, rotten, acidic, gross. They were falling apart. The whole bag was expanding full of gas. The ones that said love were perfect. You could have eaten them. They had a tiny, tiny little speck of mold. Other than that, they were amazing. Now, if that's what happens after 2 weeks to tomatoes, imagine what happens to you and how you speak to yourself. And I had to learn this. So I changed the way I was speaking about myself. Now, my brain was telling me, quit, Seamus, you'll never make it as a radio announcer. You'll never make it as a breakfast announcer. It's never going to happen. Just quit. I was running out of money quick. And I would keep saying, no, just one more day. I'd say, quit. Why don't you get through today? Quit tomorrow. Just quit. Why don't you get through this week? Why don't you quit next week? Just get through this week and quit. That went on for 8 months. And then finally, the boss of the Hit Network in Albury, Wodonga, called me up and said, hey Seamus, how do you want to host the breakfast show in Albury, Wodonga? Again, it was like waking up Christmas morning. What's better than a Dyson hairdryer? It was like getting 2 Dyson hairdryers! This was amazing! I finally did it! If I had quit, if I had stopped, I never would have gotten that phone call. And I threw myself into radio. I loved it. I became the best broadcaster I possibly could. I learned everything about the industry. I would send audio breaks to content directors all over the country to try and get feedback so I can improve. Because what happens in radio, they send you to a small country town so you can stuff up, learn the craft, and then your promotions are bigger cities. So after 2 years of that, the boss of the Hit Network in Cairns calls me up and said, how do you want to move to far north Queensland and host the breakfast show there? It was like waking up on Christmas morning and getting a personal hairdresser for 10 years. I was like, yes! I loved it. I had so much fun. My career lasted 13 years. They were going to fire me after that first week because of my flaw, because of my setback, my insecurity, my Tourette syndrome. They were going to fire me. But through my acceptance journey, discovering a passion and becoming absolutely determined, I lasted 13 years. Now, something happened around the world. I don't know if you would have heard of it. This might be radio jargon for you. Something happened called COVID-19. They pulled us in the office one day after the show and said, tomorrow's your last show. Pack your bags. You're out. And that was it. My career came to an end. So I moved back home to Brisbane with Mum and Dad, and I got on the dole. And let me tell you, it was amazing. I had just worked my ass off, straight out of school. All my friends went to uni, and they looked like they were mucking around. But something happened, right? I'm going to tell you a story about my cat. My cat growing up, this cat was so funny, she would hide under the couch and we'd walk past, scratch our feet. Or we'd go for a walk with the dog. 20 metres behind us was the cat, and we'd turn around and she'd, oh, no, I'm not following you, I just happen to be walking here as well. I remember very distinctly, I had to go to school. I was about 14 and I hated going to school, and it was cold, it was rainy, I had high socks on, big boots that were too big for me, a blazer, a tie, a bag, big heavy bag. And I was like, I don't want to go to school. And I looked on the inside, and there's my cat, like this. And I looked at her and said, you bitch. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to do anything. You don't have a care in the world. And my whole life I wanted to be my cat. So finally, when I lost my job, I went to Mum and Dad's, I became my cat. I learned how to lick myself and everything. No! I had to do yoga to reach all of those difficult places. No, but I did. I would sleep in, I'd stay up late, I'd watch movies all day. It was great. But something happened. Because I stopped, I had a chance to look back and reflect. And I reflected on this adversity that I faced, this challenge, this insecurity, this diagnosis, this thing that really gave me an identity that I hated. And I hated it because it made me different. But through that journey of acceptance, passion, and determination, it wasn't a problem anymore. In fact, it wasn't even an insecurity. It was just something that I had. And now, I'm an ambassador for Tourette Syndrome Association Australia. And I go all over the country and I give this talk. Not to say, look at this amazing career I had. No, but to say, look at what you can do. Through accepting your challenges, through accepting your adversity and your flaw, discovering your passion, becoming absolutely determined, learning that resilience, you can turn a flaw into a superpower. Now, I love my Tourette's because it makes me different. I hated it because it makes me different, but now I love it because it makes me different. In life, we do not control the cards you are dealt with, but you are in control of how you play the hand. Adversity will make you either a victim or a hero. That's up to you. The adversity is still there. Under pressure, you will either turn into a diamond or you will crush. But if you crush, you can rebuild. I'm going to show you a picture. Aiden, hit 2 for me. I want to tell you a picture about this hat. I did this presentation at this school last year, and I heard about this hat, and I thought I really want to share it in my keynote. Now, this hat is actually not a part of the school uniform, and it's been in the school for like 15 years, and it's got writing all into it. And when I heard the origins about this, I had to share it because this is an example of a student turning a flaw into a superpower. 15 years ago, the student who had and wore this hat was failing every single subject. And he was not an athlete. He was in the worst grade of all of the sporting teams. So if he wasn't an academic, and if he wasn't an athlete, he felt like a square peg in a round hole. He felt out of place. So very quickly, he accepted that. He goes, all right, if my position isn't on the field, it's on the sidelines, cheering on my best mates as they play the other school in the team sport. So he got that hat. He put the school crest on it, and he wore it. And he was at every single game. He was determined. and he was cheering on the school as they played the other schools. Cheering them on, chanting along the sidelines. And what happened is the school, when the other teams finished their sport, they would join in, and a little crowd would form. And then as the weeks went on, the crowds got bigger. Until the end of the year, the whole school was behind him. He was leading the whole school in the war cry. He was leading the whole school in the school song. All these chants, supporting their school as they played the other schools. Now at the end of that year, the end of year 12, he took the hat off and he wrote his name on the inside. Then he went up to a kid in grade 11 and said, "This is yours now." And then that kid, for the whole year, did the same thing. And then it got passed down again. And then it got passed down again. And then again. And then again. 15 years. It just got passed down at the end of last year. Now it's a whole ceremony. It's a tradition at the end of every year. Who's going to get the hat? Who's going to get the hat? There's the grade 12s, the grade 11s, they split up on the quadrangle and they do a war cry competition, and there's a huge ceremony to hand over the hat. It's created a culture, a tradition. It's left an impact. Now the position's actually in two, and there's a second hat, and it's called an SLC Spirit Captain. Now this is not determined by the teachers, this is only the students. And the first plaque in 2007 is my name, Seamus Evans. And the reason why I share that story is not to say, look at what I did at my old school. Again, it's to say, look at what you can do. Through accepting who you are, discovering a passion, being resilient, and being absolutely determined, you can not only turn a flaw into a superpower, but you can make a lasting impact in your community, your own lives, and the people around you. You can leave a tradition. How do we live our lives? One day at a time. How do we climb a mountain? One step at a time. How do we live with Tourette's? One tick at a time. All those years ago, that elephant that was on my back, that giant elephant that was my Tourette's, I heard a saying many years ago by a man named Desmond Tutu. He said, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being such a wonderful, wonderful human and for sharing such an incredible story with us. Have you ever given anyone a stitch before?